Hi, welcome back to Agile and Scrum. In the previous presentation, we have seen what is Scrum, what is Sprint. We have seen the Sprint boards, all that stuff. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to talk more about the Scrum terminology and ceremonies. So let's go to Scrum. Next slide. Scrum terminology. Now, as I told you in my previous presentation, sprint is a time frame. So Scrum is the name for the entire process framework, whereas sprint is the time frame. So Scrum consists of multiple sprints. So and again, there are so many things, new words, that needs to be learned as part of Scrum. So in this presentation, let's learn them. And the first thing we are going to learn is feature. So what is a feature? Each feature in Scrum framework represents one software functionality to be completed as part of final product. So before talking more about feature, I would like to talk about how the process starts in an agile model. In an organization where software is being developed, what happens is that the product, there will be a person called product manager. He is the one that talks to customers, the leadership team, the high-level leadership team, and the business team and all that stuff. So he is the one actually owns a particular product of a company. For example, let's take Microsoft Word. Word is a product of Microsoft, right? So there in Microsoft there would be a person. This is a hypothetical example, so it may or may not exactly matches, but just to understand, for you to understand, I'm explaining this. So there would be a person called product manager for Microsoft Word. He is only responsible for Microsoft Word. He is not responsible for other products. So what he does is that he talks to his customers, he talks to his leadership team, he talks to his users and his colleagues, and he comes up with an understanding of what Microsoft Word has got right now and what it should contain, what the customers are, what the users are looking for. All these things he will formalize. Now, normally at the beginning of every quarter, that is Jan to March is one quarter, April, May, June is another quarter, July, August, September is another quarter, October, November, December is another quarter. 4 quarters will be there in a year, right? In every beginning of the quarter, this product owner, before the beginning of the quarter, he lists out all the things that his customers or the users tell him and consolidate them as a big list of things. This list will be refined by his management team and comes up with another sub list of the original list. Now this sub list contains list of things to be done for that particular quarter. For example, in the month of December or November, December, a product manager talk to his customers and his business leaders and comes up with the final list of things. Towards the end of December, he discusses this list with all the technical people or the product owners who actually manage this product. Once everybody is on the same page, he creates something called features. That means every list item in his list of things to be done for the next quarter, that is January, February and March, he makes a write-up which contains what this requirement is, what are the things that needs to be achieved, what are the screens needs to be changed, what is the business functionality needs to be changed. For example, let's say a word needs to be converted to Excel format or PDF format. It's already there, but I'm just giving an example. Let's say that's one of the need. Convert Word document to PDF or convert Word document to HTML. Something like there is a requirement. That's a one-line requirement. Now what the product manager does is that he takes that requirement and he elaborates in a detailed way and puts it as a documentation. Normally for that kind of documentation there are software like Jira or something like that, where the product manager will document that documentation, detailed documentation of what is required, how to do that, and all these things will be is called a feature. Each feature in Scrum framework present one software functionality to be completed as part of the final product for the next release, which is like maybe quarterly release. Now, user stories. Now, it is a simple description of a portion of a product feature that is written from end to end user point of view. It's not a document, it should be a lightweight description that could invite additional conversation. So basically, user story is nothing but a small part of a feature. A feature is like a convert Word document to PDF. That's a one-line requirement. That actually, while conversion, what needs to be converted to what, like for example, how bold should be converted in bold in Word should be converted in bold in PDF, how underline should be there. If there is a table in Word document, how the table should look in PDF. All these things are written in as part of the feature description. That's called the feature description. Now, user story is one piece of it. Say, for example, how to convert bold. That means conversion of Word bold to PDF bold. That is one story, right? Or maybe it could be divided into further stories, but it's like, let's say, for discussion point, let's say it's a one story. This story is actually not the complete feature. It's only a piece of the feature. That means all the stories that the entire feature is divided into multiple user stories, and each story caters to the need of one piece of the feature. Like it's a subset of feature is user stories is a subset of a feature, and all these user stories, union of all the stories is nothing but the feature. Now, a feature is represented by 3 C's like cart, conversation, and confirmation. Now, what happens is that before the beginning of the actual release cycle, maybe like a quarter, team, the product management team and product ownership team, like technical ownership or product ownership team, they have a discussion on these things. They discuss about these features and the user stories, like on 3 seating card. Earlier in the olden days, they used to have 3 inches to 5 inches story cards, where it's actually a physical card where they used to write these user stories. This story is to convert Word document bold to PDF document bold. And that way, I think it describes what it should contain. All these things will be described in that card. Nowadays, they are not using any physical card. They are using virtual cards or the tools like Jira and stuff like that. And then they discuss about, okay, what exactly they mean by this. They will have a conversation. And once the conversation, yes, this is what it is agreed. So they will say it is agreed by product manager and the product owner, which is a technical person, talks to you. This means the actual user story written as on a card on which team and product owner have a conversation that brings out the confirmation of the user story to be part of the backlog. So I'll talk about backlog a little later. Could be and every story should detail 3 important things. One is, who is the story intended for? Who are the users of the story? The users of the output of the story. Actually, the output is the software, right? Who is going to use that software created out of user story? Again, user story is nothing but a small piece of work in a big feature. A feature is nothing but a requirement with lot of details. One requirement with lot of details. Like I said in the previous example, converting Word document to PDF. That is a feature. The story is converting, one user story is converting bold to bold in Word document, bold words to Word document to bold words in PDF. That is one user story, right? So that's how the stories will be there. The first thing is, who is the story is intended for? Second one is, what is the end goal of this user story? The third one is, why is this required in terms of value it brings in? So these are the 3 things. Now, there is a prescribed format that has to be given, which is like, they give you the entire user story in this format. As a user, I want actual work so that this actual goal. For example, in the case of, in the example that I have taken, where you convert a word bold words of MS Word to a PDF document, this is how the format. As a user of Microsoft Word, whoever it is, I want to convert the bold words in MS Word, Microsoft Word document to a PDF document. Also, it should be bold. so that people will not, that the goal is people will not see a distinction between Word and PDF, something like that. So the three things will be defined in the user story. Now we have seen features, we have seen user stories. Let's see acceptance criteria. So what is acceptance criteria? This is set of one or more conditions that tell what user story must do to satisfy the need of the customers. Basically, this is defined by the product owner with an agreement from the team members in a confirmation meeting. So as I told you earlier, there is a meeting that's going to happen. In that meeting, the product managers and product owners will have a discussion, and they agreed upon what exactly the acceptance criteria. The acceptance criteria should be clear, testable, with the pass and fail result, with the shared understanding from the team, and ensures that the story is ready for a demo. User story can have anywhere between 3 to 7 acceptance criteria. If there seems to be a need for more acceptance criteria, then it may be recommended to split the user story into multiple stories. Now, basically, this is how it works. Like I said in the beginning, every quarter, the product managers will sit with product owners. They finalize the features. Then product owner sits with the team, creates the user stories, and get the approval from the product manager. Product manager is the guy who actually talks to the customers, owners and users and the business leaders, and product owner is the guy who talks to the actual developers, who could be a manager of the developer also. So he actually liaisons between, we discussed about the position roles, right? Liaisons between the product management as well as the team members. So with the help of team members, he divides the feature into stories, and each story at the end of it will have acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria are conditions like, if this is there in the condition, yes, it is approved. If this has to be there, this has to, like that. There are some conditions that needs to be satisfied in order to say that, okay, this story is done. This is important because developers, they do the coding, right? At the end of the coding, they don't know whether what they've done is correct or not. If there is an acceptance criteria for the story, then okay, this is done, like a checklist of things, right? Now this is what an acceptance criteria is. Now a good acceptance criteria should follow certain rules, like, which is nothing but the invest. Now what is invest? Invest is, a story should be independent. It should not be dependent on any other user story. Negotiable. It should not have concrete or restricted timelines. Valuable. It should provide value to customers. Estimatable. Team should be able to figure out its complexity. I'll talk about complexity later. Small enough to complete it within the sprint. Testable, should be able to test. I think if we look at this invest principle, for a user story to have, this will actually provide a good insight of how user story should look like. So a user story should not depending upon other stories. This should be an independent piece of work. Like I said, converting a bold word in Word document to a bold word in PDF document. So it's not depending upon underlying stories or table stories or anything. It's an independent story, right? So that's the independent is. Negotiable. Again, it could be done in 1 day or 2 days. 3 days. You should not say, okay, this has to be done in like 4 days. No, it should be negotiable. It depends upon the complexity. Sometimes the stories which we think that can be done very quickly to take more time. Sometimes we think the stories could take more time, could take less time. It depends upon user story. Right, so it's like there should not be any restriction on this should take this much time kind of thing. No, it's a valuable. It should provide value to the customer. It should be useful to the customer, and it's also estimatable. Team should be able to figure out the complexity of it. Right, it should be clear. The requirement and the acceptance should be clear, so that team should, okay, I can do it in 4 days or 5 days, this sprint. They should know what it takes. It should be small enough to be completed with the sprint. Well, as I told you in the earlier presentations, whatever we do in sprint, it should provide at the end of the sprint, we should have a software. So whatever user stories we develop should be small enough to be completed within the sprint itself. If it takes multiple sprints, then it's good to divide them into pieces. And it also should be testable. right? People should be able to actually, acceptance criteria is a good place for the testing team to understand, okay, what are the tests that they need to develop, how do we what are the additional scenarios they need to, all these things will be given by the acceptance criteria. So this is about the acceptance criteria and the invest principles of the story. Acceptance criteria will be part of the story, user story. Invest is the principle or characteristic of a good ready to work on user story, right? So these are the thing. The next one is product backlog. Product backlog is nothing but a prioritized list of user stories outlining need of the business. Product backlog will continue to grow as the business requirement continue to grow. It reflects the product vision. It is the responsibility of the product owner to prioritize the product backlog. PO picks up those top priority stories from the product backlog for the team to work on in a sprint. So basically, we talked about two roles. One is product manager and product owner. Product manager is the one who is responsible for the product that is given to the customers, whereas product owner is actually responsible to the product manager as well as the team. He is the agent between the product manager and the product owner, right? So product backlog is something that product managers create, but as the business requirement changes, but the product owners will take that backlog, discuss with the product manager, and prioritize the list for the team to deliver. They have a big list of all the items in a prioritized order. Now, before beginning of the sprint, after discussing with the product manager takes some of those stories and put it into the sprint. Give it to the sprint. Okay, in this sprint, from this 100 list of stories, let's do these 5 stories, 8 stories, or 2 stories, whatever it is, right? So number based on the team capacity, we will talk about capacity later, but team output and stuff like that. He will pick up few of the stories and say, let's execute these, build the stories in this sprint. That's how he picks up stories. So that's called product backlog. A product backlog is nothing but a big list of user stories that actually required to be done for the product to be completed or for the product release to be happen. This list is a prioritized list. Now sprint backlog. The next one is sprint backlog. Sprint backlog in general is created by the product owner. Product backlog is created by the product manager, whereas sprint backlog is created by the product owner. Pulling the prioritized list of user stories from the product backlog into the sprint for the purpose of sprint planning ceremonies on the first day of the sprint based on the team capacity to work in the sprint. After discussing with the product owner, team accepts stories to work during the sprint. Team owns the sprint backlog. Now product backlog is owned by the product manager, whereas sprint backlog, sometimes product manager could be a product owner as well, right? So it depends upon the company. Sprint backlog actually owned by the team. Now, what's meant by ownership? In the beginning of the sprint, which is like a 2 weeks or a 3 weeks or a 1 week or a 4 week, right? Because what happens is product owner, out of this n number of stories, picks up 5, 6 stories, which I told you earlier, right? And on the first day of sprint, you'll put it into the sprint. This is nothing but the sprint backlog. He will plan that let's do these 5 stories in this sprint. That's the sprint backlog, right? Now, once it is put into the sprint board, the team started picking it up and working on it, right? That's how it works. Now, how many stories he picks up depends upon sprint capacity. For example, let's say there are 5 members in the team, right? Maybe a couple of team members go on vacation. In that case, he should not. In the last sprint, they worked on 8 stories. In that case, of where people are going on leave, the product owner should not put 8 stories again. He has to reduce it because there are less number of people, right? So it depends upon the team capacity. It could be managed. The backlog should grow or shrink based on. For example, suddenly somebody got some emergency and not able to work. In that case, sprint backlog could be shrunk, right? So this is how it could happen. Now working agreement. This is also called playbook. This is actually outside the Scrum framework. This is nothing but list of rules that clearly visible and accessible to everybody that can that contains expectations and procedures that govern how team will work together, and everybody in the team must agree with that. This is a living document that is updated and changed as and when needed. Normally, working agreement defines definition of ready and definition of done. Now, what this means? Working agreements, again, this is Scrum doesn't say anything about working agreements, but this is normally followed in Scrum. So, there is a document which contains mainly contains two things: definition of ready, definition of done. I will talk about them little later, but two things. Now, these two things will define how the things needs to be carried out. Again, like I said, Scrum is also a framework. It doesn't really say what exactly needs to be processed and exactly done, but it just gives a placeholder, right? So in this placeholder, definition of ready, definition of done will be given, which is called the working agreement. Now, what is definition of ready? Definition of ready means this is one of the most important part of the working agreement. Setting up this is the responsibility of the Scrum Master. This is generally applicable to feature and user stories. This means a feature or a user story is said to be ready when that feature or user story contains all the information defined in the definition of ready. Normally, definition of ready mandates the presence of who, what, why details and acceptance criteria in a feature or a user story. We discussed about acceptance criteria. We discussed about how story should be read. So now what happens is, normally a Scrum Master, again, the Scrum Master could be a separate person or could be in a product owner itself, right? So the Scrum Master, what he does is that generally he will make sure that whatever features or stories that are given to the team members, they are in tune with the rules specified in the definition of ready. Definition of ready contains set of rules. Okay, the story or the feature should contain all the details about what exactly needs to be done. It should contain links for the side reading. It should contain the acceptance criteria clearly. The story or feature should say who is going to use it, what needs to be done, why it needs. All these rules are framed by the as a document. Again, specifics are not there. What exactly needed will be there in this document. Now, for every user story, this document will be referred. In the beginning, we have to refer, otherwise after some time it becomes a habit, right? So all the things in the definition of ready documents are satisfied with what is specified in the story. If they are satisfied, yes, you can start working on this. Otherwise, you say, let's say in a story acceptance criteria is not given. Somebody forgot to type. Then team members say, this story doesn't have acceptance criteria, so I'm not going to work on it. Yes, you can say that, right? So that's how you can do that, right? So that is one important piece of document, definition of ready. Again, definition of ready doesn't specify any story specific things. It contains rules of what a story should, how and what a story should be look like, what it should contain, and how it should present the information, right? So that's what definition of ready. Definition of ready means, is it ready for working on by the developers or not? That's what definition of ready. Now, definition of done. This is the document that is visible and easily accessible by everyone, and is a common understanding that it can help the team to increase their productivity. Normally, it's called abbreviated as DOD. Normally, DOD checklist contains: is it accepted criteria met? Unit tests are written. Is it tested properly? Testing scripts are attached. Code is reviewed. And also the details, the documentation about technical details, like high level documents are there or not. Is it acceptable? So all these things. So whatever list of things that needs to happen to say that, yeah, story is done by the developer is good. In order to say the story is done, we have to, the definition of done criteria should be met. Say for example, let's say user story, a developer written the code, it is working, tested, but he did not write any unit test cases. Now the definition of done says unit tests should be written. Then developer did not do the unit testing. So that means even though story is done, that the software is there, working, tested, and everything looks good, it is not done because it's not following definition of done. Because definition of done says unit test should be written. So what exactly is required in the definition of done? or definition of ready are defined by the team. Team defines the team along with Scrum Master and Product Owner and Product Manager if required. So, but once they are done, all the stories and features for that matter should follow those rules. So, a story is ready, picked up by a developer or a QA only if it follows definition of ready. A story is accepted by the product owner only if done is done. DOD is done. Sometimes people say done. Done means a definition of done is done. That's what done means. So like two dones, one after the done, right? That's what it is. That's about definition of done. Now product increment. This is nothing but what comes out of a sprint. This is a potentially shippable vertical slice of big solution that is created as part of sprint time box. Vertical slicing means when compared against the waterfall model, it is nothing but running small portion of the big solution, which is nothing but the product increment through all the phases of water model, such as analysis, requirements, design, develop, test, and shipping of for sprint duration, and provide that to the customer. So I think I talked about this vertical slicing in earlier slides in a slightly lighter way. This is nothing but, let's say there is it's nothing but like let's say we have an apple, we want to cut it, right? So there are two ways you can cut it. Horizontally, you can cut an apple, or you can cut vertically, right? So what happens when you cut horizontally? When you cut horizontally, you get only the bottom portion, right? And then next you get another portion, and then you get so that means you are missing you are missing some portion of it. Whereas when you cut vertically, you get all the in a particular wall kind of, you get all the pieces from top to down. That means you get the entire piece of entire apple. Whereas when you cut horizontally, you won't get the piece of entire apple. You will get only the bottom slice or the middle slice. You won't get the entire piece. Whereas when you cut vertically, you will get the entire piece, but in a small quantity. That's why vertical slicing. Agile, in particular, Agile says do the work vertically. That means, let's say a product, I think I told you about this earlier, a product contains front end, middle tier, and back end, which is a database. Every software increment should try to have all the three pieces, not exhaustively, but at least small pieces of these things. That means it's like cutting an apple like vertically rather than horizontally. That's what about and each small portion of the vertical slice that is released after the sprint is completed is called the product increment. This is about some of the terminology. Thank you very much.
Like, share, comment, and subscribe VNR Digital Learning Resource YouTube channel.